Before we begin, I want you to do something simple. Pause whatever expectation you walked in with, because what you're about to hear isn't another trendy piece of advice, and it's not another recycled idea wrapped in pretty language. It is the kind of truth that forces you to confront yourself, not because you want to, but because you can't escape the part of you that knows something in your life has to change. And maybe that's why you're here. Maybe you've reached a point where you're tired of feeling misunderstood, tired of giving more than you receive, tired of feeling like your efforts always fall short of being recognized or appreciated. Maybe you're here because you've stayed silent for too long, or you've been loud in all the wrong places, or you've tried to fix people who never even tried to understand you. Whatever brought you to this video, understand this: you are not here by accident. You're here because a shift is already happening inside you, and you're finally ready to stop running from it. Stay with me till the end, because what I'm about to break down will not just change how you see others, it will change how you see yourself. It will make you aware of the silent power you've been giving away, the emotional energy you've been wasting, and the boundaries you've been too afraid to set. And once you understand this, once you truly absorb it, something in you will refuse to go back to who you were before. This is the moment you stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. Don't blink. Don't look away. This might be the most important 7 minutes you give yourself this year. Younger women don't crave age. They crave the emotional composure that only a man who has lived, failed, rebuilt, and learned can embody. And the reason this truth shocks so many men is because they've been conditioned to believe attraction is about appearance, status, or charm. But attraction at its core, especially toward a man who is older, comes from something far more subtle. It comes from the quiet discipline of how he carries his emotions, the way he holds himself when life becomes chaotic, the way he responds rather than reacts, the way he looks at a problem and refuses to let it disturb the center of his being. This steadiness is not arrogance. It is not emotional coldness. It is mastery, and that mastery becomes magnetic. Younger women live in a world where emotional turbulence is the norm. Their lives are often filled with uncertainty, insecurity, comparison, and the pressure to prove themselves. When they look around, they see younger men who are still battling themselves internally, fighting for validation, reacting impulsively, struggling to regulate their emotions, or trying too hard to appear confident when they're actually overwhelmed. So when she encounters a man whose presence is grounded, whose energy is calm, whose emotions are not all over the place, she feels it instantly. His stability becomes a contrast so sharp that it pulls her in before she even consciously understands why. Emotional composure is not about being unaffected. It's about being intentional. It's about knowing that emotions are signals, not commands. Younger women recognize when a man has done this inner work. They see it in the way he listens, in the way he pauses before responding, in the way he asks questions instead of jumping to conclusions, in the way he communicates without aggression and sets boundaries without theatrics. This level of control doesn't come from age alone. It comes from reflection, discipline, and experience. It comes from life teaching him what panic destroys, what impulsiveness ruins, and what emotional clarity can save. Younger women crave this because it gives them a sense of direction, not dominance, direction. A sense that the man in front of them knows who he is, knows what he wants, and knows how to handle himself. When she speaks, he doesn't interrupt to defend his ego. When she expresses emotion, he doesn't crumble or lash out. When conflict arises, he doesn't spiral into panic, but addresses it with clarity. She isn't drawn to him because his life is perfect. She's drawn to him because his inner world is not a storm. There's a psychological reason behind this attraction too. Emotional composure signals safety, and safety is the foundation of feminine desire. Safety allows her to relax, to open up, to feel seen instead of judged, to express instead of suppress. A man who can regulate his emotions gives her permission to step into her softness because she doesn't have to worry about being the emotional container for both of them. She can be expressive without the fear that he will take it personally or react unpredictably. That emotional safety becomes oxygen for the relationship, and she feels it immediately. Another thing many men overlook is how deeply women sense emotional energy. They don't just hear what you say, they feel the energy behind it. If you speak from insecurity, she feels tension. If you speak from pressure, she feels heaviness. But if you speak from composure, from a confident inner stillness, she feels something else entirely. She feels ease. She feels trust. She feels curiosity, and curiosity is the seed of attraction. The older man who carries himself with emotional composure communicates through his actions that he's not chasing chaos, he's choosing peace. He's not desperate to be liked, he's committed to being real. He's not intimidated by a woman's emotions, he respects them. And this is where younger women feel the difference between a man who is emotionally available and one who is emotionally unstable. The composed man is not performing. He is not pretending. He is not trying to look calm. He has learned how to be calm. That authenticity is rare, and rarity is attractive. If you want to understand why this one trait makes younger women crave older men, look at the world around them. Look at the emotional exhaustion, the pressures, the expectations, the relationships built on trauma rather than truth. In that world, the composed man becomes a sanctuary, a refuge, a reminder that masculinity is not chaos, it is order, it is intention, it is presence. Emotional composure is not just attractive, it is transformational. It changes how she speaks to you, how she trusts you, how she invests in you, how she respects you. Because a man who can regulate his emotions shows her that he can regulate his life. And a man who can regulate his life is a man she can build with. The truth is simple. Emotional composure is the quiet power that separates men who chase validation from men who attract devotion. And that power is available to every man willing to master himself. In the end, remember this. Women don't want the loudest man in the room. They want the man whose silence says everything. Younger women don't fall for older men because of looks. They fall for the presence behind the looks. And this is where most men misunderstand attraction at its deepest psychological level. Physical appearance might start a conversation, but it's your emotional gravity, the energy you carry, the weight of your presence, the depth in your eyes, that keeps her intrigued. She isn't drawn to wrinkles or gray hair. She's drawn to the sense of stability and confidence those features often represent. She's drawn to the man who moves through the world with intention instead of insecurity, direction instead of confusion, grounded certainty instead of restless anticipation. When you understand this, you stop worrying about competing with younger men because you realize you're not even in the same category. Emotional gravity is something younger men rarely have, not because they're inadequate, but because they haven't lived enough to develop it. Gravity comes from experience. It comes from heartbreak that forced you to grow, from failures that humbled you, from victories that didn't change you, from self-reflection that made you aware of your patterns, your triggers, and your responsibility in every outcome. This depth settles into a man like a weight that anchors him. And that anchoring energy creates a pull, quiet, subtle, powerful, that younger women feel immediately. When she sits across from you, she senses something she's not used to. Most men her age project intensity, excitement, unpredictability. But you project steadiness, you project assurance. You project a calm confidence that doesn't need to be loud to be noticed. Younger women feel this difference viscerally. It's not intellectual attraction, it's psychological and emotional attraction. It's instinctive. When she looks at you, she isn't just seeing a man, she's sensing a foundation. There's an emotional maturity in the way you hold yourself that makes her feel like she can rest. Not physically rest, emotionally rest. She doesn't have to manage your reactions, tiptoe around your insecurities, or carry the responsibility of making you feel worthy. Younger men often make a woman feel like she has to be emotionally responsible for the relationship. But a man with emotional gravity flips that dynamic. He is the emotional anchor, not the emotional burden. He is the one who can sit with discomfort instead of running from it, who can listen without being defensive, who can disagree without disrespect. That level of emotional discipline makes her feel safe, understood, and valued. And understand this clearly, emotional gravity is not about being serious all the time. It's not about being stoic or unexpressive. It's about depth. It's about having layers. It's about being able to hold tension without collapsing into chaos. It's the difference between a man who reacts out of fear and a man who responds out of clarity. Younger women are drawn to the man who responds, the man whose emotional state does not depend on external validation, the man who knows what he stands for and doesn't need applause to feel significant. Many men underestimate how intensely women observe emotional patterns. Women sense your internal world long before you speak. If your energy is scattered, they feel it. If you're insecure, they feel it. If you're desperate, they feel it. But if you're centered, if you're grounded, if you're emotionally anchored, they feel that too. And that grounded energy becomes a psychological magnet. It communicates without speaking. It invites without insisting. It attracts without performing. This is why you'll often hear women say they feel drawn to an older man without knowing why. They're responding to his emotional field, not his appearance. They're responding to the calmness in his voice, the patience in his timing, the steadiness in his eyes. This is emotional gravity. It's the invisible force that makes her lean closer, listen deeper, and trust quicker. And what's powerful about this is that emotional gravity cannot be faked. You can fake charm, you can fake confidence, you can fake lifestyle, but you cannot fake inner stability. It reveals itself in your reactions, in your pauses, in your decision-making, in your silence. And women, especially younger women, have a built-in radar for emotional authenticity. When a man is grounded, it shows. When a man is pretending, it collapses. Emotional gravity also creates something younger men struggle to provide: emotional containment. Containment is the ability to hold space for a woman's emotions without drowning in them. It's the ability to stay composed even when she's overwhelmed. It's the ability to remain solid while she processes her fears, her insecurities, or her desires. Younger women crave this because it gives them permission to feel without the fear of being too much. Your groundedness becomes her safety. Your presence becomes her reassurance. Your stability becomes her confidence. And here's the truth that many men overlook: emotional gravity is built, not bought. It's cultivated through honesty with yourself, through accountability, through emotional discipline, through living with intention instead of impulse. When you build emotional gravity, you don't just attract women, you shift the entire way people interact with you. The man with emotional gravity doesn't chase, he draws. He doesn't perform, he aligns. He doesn't act powerful, he becomes powerful. So remember this: your looks may capture her curiosity, but your emotional gravity is what captures her loyalty. When a younger woman says, "I feel safe with you," she isn't talking about locked doors, strong arms, or the ability to protect her physically. What she's really describing is emotional safety, the rare experience of being seen, heard, valued, and understood without judgment or pressure. Emotional safety is the foundation of feminine desire, and most men never realize how powerful it is. Younger women don't crave an older man because he is older. They crave him because he often brings a level of emotional safety that younger men haven't developed yet. And this isn't about age, it's about inner stability, emotional awareness, and presence. Younger women live in a world that constantly pushes them towards self-comparison, insecurity, and emotional overload. Their minds are bombarded with expectations: be independent, but also soft, be confident, but not intimidating, be expressive, but not too emotional. They're navigating friendships, careers, family expectations, and a dating world filled with immaturity and inconsistency. So when she encounters a man who listens without rushing her, who understands without minimizing her feelings, who reassures without controlling, she feels a level of peace she rarely experiences. That peace becomes attraction. Emotional safety means she doesn't have to shrink to keep the relationship stable. She doesn't have to pretend her feelings are smaller than they are. She doesn't have to translate her emotions into something simpler just to avoid overwhelming the man standing in front of her. Instead, she feels free to express, free to reveal her vulnerabilities, free to communicate honestly. This emotional openness only occurs when she senses the man has the capacity to hold her emotions without being threatened by them. And younger women know instinctively which men have this capacity and which do not. The emotionally immature man interprets her feelings as attacks. He becomes reactive, defensive, dismissive, or overwhelmed. He needs constant reassurance, constant validation, and constant control. When she cries, he panics. When she expresses discomfort, he becomes hostile. When she needs support, he makes it about himself. This kind of emotional immaturity forces her to walk on eggshells. But the emotionally grounded man, often an older man, does something different. He listens. Not to defend himself, not to win the argument, not to shut the conversation down, but to understand. He doesn't rush to fix her feelings because he knows feelings don't need fixing. They need witnessing. He doesn't take her emotion personally because he understands that emotions are human, not threats. He allows her to process in her own rhythm, without judgment, without pressure, without interrupting her self-expression. This level of emotional steadiness creates a profound sense of safety for her. She feels like she can exhale. She feels like she can be imperfect. She feels like she can be human. The emotionally safe man becomes a sanctuary, a space where she can put down her armor without fear that it will be used against her. And when a woman feels emotionally safe with a man, her attraction deepens in ways that are far more powerful than physical desire. One of the reasons emotional safety is so attractive is because it signals maturity. It shows her that the man has mastered his own emotions enough to handle hers, that he is not impulsive, that he is not insecure, that he is not emotionally fragile. She can trust a man like this with the parts of herself she hides from the world. Not because he is perfect, but because he is reliable. Another reason emotional safety is so magnetic is because it is rare. Many men can offer chemistry. Many men can offer attention, but very few can offer emotional containment, the ability to absorb emotional intensity without collapsing. This is something that comes from introspection, self-awareness, and inner work. Younger women admire it because it represents strength, not the strength to dominate, but the strength to remain calm when emotions rise. Emotional safety also allows the relationship to grow in a healthier direction. When a woman feels safe, she naturally becomes more affectionate, more feminine, more trusting, and more emotionally available. Her softness isn't a performance, it's a response. She responds to the environment the man creates. A man who provides emotional safety brings out the best in her, just as she brings out the gentleness in him. What many men don't realize is that emotional safety is a leadership quality. It is emotional leadership. It is the ability to guide the relationship without controlling it. It is the ability to protect her heart without smothering her freedom. And this kind of leadership is what younger women often find missing in men their own age. They aren't looking for a father figure. They're looking for a man who leads with emotional intelligence. The emotionally safe man doesn't avoid conflict. He navigates it with clarity. He doesn't run when things get hard. He becomes more present. He doesn't use silence as a weapon. He uses it as a space to understand. And this emotional depth becomes the very thing that keeps her connected to him. Emotional safety is not complicated. It is simply the result of a man who has faced himself long enough to understand others. And that kind of man becomes unforgettable. A woman may desire many things from a relationship, but emotional safety is the one thing she will never compromise. And the man who offers it becomes the man she chooses with both her mind and her heart. Younger men often underestimate how deeply their emotional chaos affects the women around them. They think attraction is built on confidence, charm, or physical energy. But younger women are far more sensitive to emotional patterns than men realize. They notice the impulsiveness. They notice the insecurity hidden behind jokes, bravado, and constant validation seeking. They notice the way younger men panic when they don't get immediate attention, or how quickly they shift from affection to withdrawal when their ego feels threatened. And without consciously deciding it, younger women start to drift away from that instability because instability is emotionally expensive. Mature masculine energy feels entirely different, calmer, clearer, and far more reliable. And that difference becomes the reason she gravitates toward it. Younger men often live in extremes. They love intensely, then lose interest quickly. They promise certainty, then change direction based on mood. They communicate impulsively, then regret what they said. They get jealous easily, get bored easily, get overwhelmed easily. Their emotional world is inconsistent, up one day, down the next. And that inconsistency makes a woman feel unsteady. She feels like she must constantly manage the energy of the relationship in order to keep it intact. She becomes the emotional stabilizer, not the man. That drains her. It exhausts her. It makes her lose trust. Then she meets a man whose presence is steady. A man who doesn't swing emotionally from one extreme to another. A man who doesn't turn conflict into chaos. A man who doesn't need reassurance every time she changes her tone. And this steadiness isn't about age. It's about inner maturity. It's about a man who has learned from life, who has confronted himself honestly, who has developed self-awareness instead of feeding his impulses. This maturity shows up in the way he talks, the way he listens, the way he acts. It shows up in his timing, his patience, his clarity. It shows up in the way he resolves misunderstandings without making them personal. Younger women crave this because it allows them to relax into their feminine energy. They don't have to lead the relationship. They don't have to stabilize it. They don't have to guide the emotional direction. Mature masculine energy gives her something younger men often cannot: emotional rest. That rest isn't weakness, it's emotional freedom. She doesn't have to be on guard. She doesn't have to overthink. She doesn't have to question his intentions every week. She doesn't have to wonder if he'll disappear, change suddenly, or create more emotional work for her. The mature man's energy is consistent, and consistency is the quiet foundation of attraction. Mature masculine energy also brings something younger women rarely experience: gentle strength, not forceful strength, not aggressive strength, gentle strength. The kind of strength that can hold tension without collapsing, the kind that can handle her emotional intensity without losing direction. Younger men take her emotions personally. They get triggered, defensive, or overwhelmed. They respond with fight or flight, but a mature man breathes through it. He listens, he reflects, he stays grounded. He understands that her emotion is not chaos, it is communication, and this emotional understanding makes her feel valued rather than problematic. Younger women admire a man who can stand in his identity without needing to prove it. A man who doesn't need validation to feel like a man who doesn't get threatened by her success, her independence, or her emotional intelligence. Immature men feel intimidated by these things. Mature men feel inspired by them. Immature men compete with their partner's confidence. Mature men hold space for it. This emotional maturity creates a balance where both can grow without overpowering each other. There is also something deeply attractive about a man who carries discipline in his habits, in his speech, and in his emotional world. Discipline creates reliability. Reliability creates trust. Trust creates attraction. A younger woman doesn't need a man who impresses her. She needs a man who reassures her through consistency. And consistency is something that comes from maturity, not age. The mature man has learned the cost of emotional recklessness. He has seen what impulsivity destroys. He has seen how uncontrolled reactions can break trust, break relationships, and break self-respect. So he chooses differently. He chooses intention over impulse. He chooses thoughtfulness over emotional outbursts. He chooses integrity over momentary satisfaction. And these choices quietly separate him from the emotionally chaotic crowd. Younger women don't crave an older man just because he's older. They crave the emotional discipline, the stability, the reliability, and the self-awareness that often come with maturity. They crave a man who is not confused about who he is, a man whose presence doesn't drain them but steadies them, a man who leads not through control but through clarity. In the end, immature energy excites her for a moment, but mature masculine energy anchors her for a lifetime. When a younger woman is drawn to an older man, it's rarely because of what he owns, it's because of how he thinks. His mindset is different. His worldview is different. His priorities are different, and she feels that difference immediately. Younger men often live reactively. They respond to life as it comes. They chase instant gratification. They move with emotion instead of intention. But an older man, especially one who has grown through experience, carries something she cannot ignore: a long-term mindset. Not a mindset of survival, but a mindset of vision. He isn't living just for the next moment, he's living for the next chapter. And this is one of the deepest things younger women secretly crave, but cannot always articulate. She sees it in the way he speaks. He doesn't talk in circles. He talks with purpose. He doesn't make promises he can't keep. He speaks from experience, not from fantasy. His thinking is structured, measured, calm. When she shares her dreams, he doesn't tell her they're unrealistic or too big. He listens with presence, reflects with clarity, and guides without trying to control. That ability to be both supportive and grounded is something younger men rarely master because they're still trying to figure out their own direction. A long-term mindset shows up in the decisions he makes. He doesn't waste time on chaos. He doesn't create unnecessary drama. He doesn't choose people based on impulse. He chooses based on alignment. Younger women admire this because it shows he has discipline. It shows he knows who he is and what he wants. And when a man knows what he wants, he becomes far easier to trust. He becomes easier to follow. He becomes easier to build with. Younger men often approach relationships with a trial and error mindset. They try things, see how they feel, and act based on emotion of the moment. But a man with a long-term mindset understands emotional responsibility. He knows that a relationship is not built on excitement alone. It's built on consistency, communication, and clarity. He is not interested in wasting her time or his own. And younger women, especially those who are emotionally intelligent, feel a deep sense of respect for that approach. What younger women crave most is a man who thinks beyond himself, a man who understands commitment, direction, and purpose. A man who isn't afraid of responsibility but actually embraces it. Responsibility doesn't scare him, it defines him. He isn't trying to impress her, he's trying to build something meaningful. And this is where attraction becomes something deeper than chemistry. It becomes psychological security. She sees how he handles setbacks. Instead of spiraling, he adjusts. Instead of blaming, he learns. Instead of running, he restructures. His mind processes life with logic instead of panic. His emotional balance comes from wisdom, not detachment. His patience comes from understanding, not apathy. And this creates a kind of stability younger men simply haven't developed yet. A long-term mindset also reflects in how he treats her. He invests in communication because he understands the cost of silence. He invests in honesty because he knows the damage of dishonesty. He invests in emotional transparency because he knows relationships thrive on understanding, not guessing. Younger men tend to hide their insecurities, avoid difficult conversations, or mask vulnerability with ego. But the mature man does the opposite. He communicates openly, directly, and without emotional games. Younger women feel safer with this because they don't have to decode him. What truly surprises many women is this: older men move slower, but they think deeper. They aren't rushing to claim her. They're trying to understand her. They aren't trying to impress her. They're trying to connect with her. They aren't trying to own her. They're trying to grow with her. That depth, that intentionality, that emotional patience, it's intoxicating in a world filled with superficial thinking. Younger women crave a man who sees beyond temporary pleasure, a man who sees potential, a man who sees partnership, a man who sees legacy. When she meets a man who thinks in years instead of minutes, everything about him feels different. His presence feels safer. His words feel heavier. His intentions feel cleaner. His emotional energy feels more secure. And this is the true secret. Women don't fall for older men because they lived longer. They fall for them because they've learned longer. They've reflected longer. They've healed longer. They think in ways that make her feel guided, not pressured, valued, not used, seen, not sized, safe, not controlled. A long-term mindset doesn't just attract her, it elevates her. It expands her vision, her confidence, her emotional world. And when a woman feels emotionally expanded by a man, she stays. In the end, she's not looking for a man who thinks fast. She's looking for a man who thinks forward.